The armored column pushes towards Karamles, a Christian village 15 kilometers east of Mosul. Inside, there is fierce fighting between Iraqi infantry and an estimated 15 jihadists.
I'm watching the enemy. When I see a jihadist, I shoot him. I've killed 5 since the beginning of the battle.
These Iraqi armored vehicles are now positioned very close to the small city of Karamles. There is still sporadic gunfire inside. We will be entering with the army in a minute. We discover a town damaged by heavy fighting. The soldiers lead us to St. Barbara's Church, where they celebrate their victory. Islamic State group fighters used the ancient Christian shrine as a bunker. Underneath, a tunnel network branches out to different combat positions.
This is where they position their rocket launchers and snipers. From here, they fire at the Iraqi forces. We arrived from this side and they fled that way.
There are no IS militants' bodies to be seen. The jihadists have fled towards Mosul in the last stages of battle. Soldiers sweep the town for fighters and mines. On the roof of the church, a sniper notices movement in the distance.
It's a truck bomb. Look over there, there's a truck bomb.
The forces start firing erratically towards the target. In the face of heavy gunfire, the truck driver has U-turned and fled. The situation has become unstable in town. The army decides we have to leave immediately.
Day 9 of the battle for Mosul. 78 villages have been liberated from the so-called Islamic State, according to the Iraqi army. Kurdish Peshmerga troops and elite Iraqi forces have advanced to within 7 kilometers of Iraq's second city. But the coalition forces are experiencing fierce resistance from ISIL. It comes in the form of suicide attacks, roadside bombs and distraction attacks in towns elsewhere in Iraq. In a refugee camp in Erbil, Sunni tribesmen are ready to take on the militants who seized their lands 2 years ago. I heard on TV that they're gathering people to fight against ISIL, so I decided to sign up to take my revenge on them, as they killed many members of my family. The timing may be crucial. The UN is warning that ISIL could use rudimentary chemical weapons and expects a mass exodus of civilians from within Mosul to begin within days.
Work has begun on dismantling the sprawling jungle camp in Calais. Eyewitnesses say workers have started to tear down unoccupied tents and shacks by hand. Officials say demolition work has begun this way to avoid inflaming the already sensitive situation. Bulldozers will be brought in later in the week. It's hoped the camp will be cleared by Friday. The operation to clear it has been peaceful so far. More than 1,000 police have been deployed to the site. Fabienne Bocco is head of the Calais region. The demolition work will help convince those who were hesitating about leaving, she says. They really need to understand that the camp and this desperate situation is finished. More than 3,000 people have been moved on from the jungle so far. For many of the migrants from Syria, Afghanistan and other conflict zones, the closure of the jungle marks the end of a dream to reach the UK. Police were sent to maintain order when dozens of migrants tried to rush the barrier at a temporary processing centre in the camp. They could be seen pushing back as dozens of migrants surged against the barricade. Most identified themselves as unaccompanied minors with relatives in the UK.
They're allowing them to go into Syria to cause even more trouble there and to recover from the losses of their defeats over there.
Well, speaking of that, Mr. Kelly, the fleeing of Daesh terrorists from Mosul into Syria, is that something that cannot be helped, or was that strategically planned?
Well, of course, it would appear obvious that it's strategically planned, because if we look at retreats historically, retreating Iraqi forces leaving Kuwait, the road to Basra, as you will, they killed 400,000 retreating troops, and they are so good at taking out hospitals and schools as they did here. I don't understand, or even civilian wedding processions, and yet they can't identify fleeing troops. It's illogical, and obviously it's purely obvious that they have no intention of attacking these fleeing troops.
Okay, let's leave it there for now. That's Stephen Kelly, former CIA NSA contractor, joining us via Skype from Los Angeles. Mr. Kelly, thank you very much indeed for your comments here on Press TV.
Como matemática, física, química y biología. Si no sabía. Está bien, pero no hay idea de...
The latest attack has reinforced the view that the fight against terrorism is far from over, despite Pakistan's claim of eliminating major terrorist sanctuaries from the northwest of the country.
The fight against terrorism is not going to be over in the next few years. It's a long-drawn fight in which we have to pay even more sacrifice in the future. But what needs to be done is that we have to be vigilant. We have to be extremely vigilant.
Quetta has come under attack repeatedly in recent months. In August, at least 80 people, mostly lawyers, were killed when a bomber blew himself up in the emergency section of the city's main hospital. As people here mourn the deaths of young police recruits, the country's counter-terrorism strategy is yet again under the scanner. Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif consulted the military and intelligence chiefs to review the security arrangement and find answers as to how the militants once again succeeded in achieving their target. Kamran Yusuf, Press TV, Islamabad.
The U.S. and its allies plan to force ISIS out of its capital city, Raqqa, Syria, shortly after the city of Mosul, Iraq, is won. That, according to U.S. Defense Secretary Ash Carter today. The liberation of Mosul by Iraqi and Kurdish troops, backed by American air power and special forces, is still likely many weeks away. Holly Williams is with refugees who are spilling onto the battlefield.
The refugees are a fraction of those still trapped under ISIS inside Mosul. But there are fears already that ISIS fighters could use the exodus to escape or launch terror attacks. At this camp, housing some refugees from Mosul, they separate the men on arrival to interrogate them. These men told us they welcome it because they fled here to be safe. But Ahmet, who came from Hawija to the south, is accused of being an ISIS fighter. He admits that his father and two brothers joined the extremists, but is adamant that he did not. Why did you flee now? Why not before? We heard there was an amnesty for people, even if they had family members in ISIS, he said, so I came to find out. He can only join the other refugees if he can prove he's innocent. A week into the Mosul offensive, ISIS is outgunned and outmanned, but fighting back with its trademark guerrilla tactics. Suicide attacks and car bombs. digging networks of tunnels and launching surprise assaults, like this one in the town of Rutba, 200 miles west of Baghdad. Planting its fighters amongst desperate refugees to wreak more violence is a tactic that ISIS will find hard to resist.
Since this offensive began, the United Nations has received unconfirmed reports of massacres in Mosul, Scott, including the killing of 50 police officers and the murder of 70 civilians in a village near the city.
Holly Williams on the battlefield for us tonight. Holly, thank you.